Celine Voss had not slept properly in 11 days. She knew this, not because she counted, but because her hands had started shaking, a small, steady tremor that she could only stop by pressing her palms flat against the cold stone of the moon gate. The stone always helped. It was the one thing in her life that still responded to her the way it was supposed to. The moon gate stood at the heart of the Thornvale Mountains, buried deep inside a canyon that no map showed and no road led to. It was not a door in the way most people imagined doors. It was a circle of enormous stones, each one carved with symbols older than any living language, each one kept in place by a combination of ancient agreement and human will. For 300 years, the wardens had kept it sealed. For the last 2 years, Celine had kept it sealed alone. She had not always been alone. There had been 12 of them once, a full order, trained and committed, bound by oath and blood to stand watch over the gate. Then the sickness came. It moved quietly at first, taking the oldest members, then the youngest. 4 of her order died within 6 months. Then came the betrayals. Not dramatic ones, not the kind told in stories, but the ordinary, human kind. People who decided their lives were worth more than their promises. 3 left without a word. The others scattered slowly, one by one, until the morning Celine woke up and realized that the footsteps she heard in the canyon were only her own. She did not allow herself to feel sorry about it for very long. Grief was a luxury she could not afford. The gate was trembling. It had started 3 weeks ago. A low hum, almost like a sound, but felt more in the chest than heard with the ears. She recognized it from the old texts she had memorized as a girl. It meant that something on the other side of the gate was pushing, something organized, something that had been watching the gate weaken and had decided now was the moment to press. Every 7th night, the moon turned red. That was the second sign. She had read about it, but never expected to see it herself. Standing beneath a red moon with only stone walls around her, and no one beside her, Celine felt the full weight of what she was doing. But she did not stop. She reset the wards. She refreshed the carvings with careful, deliberate strokes. She pressed her bleeding hands into the grooves in the stone, because warden blood was part of the seal, had always been, and she was the only warden left. Twice, something broke through the membrane of the gate, not fully, just fingers, long and dark, reaching through gaps in the seal like smoke finding a crack under a door. The first time, she sealed it in 40 seconds. She was proud of that. The second time, one of those dark shapes wrapped itself around her wrist and pulled. She felt herself sliding forward, the stone floor scraping under her boots, and for one terrible second, she understood what it would mean if she went through. She did not go through. She braced her free hand against the gate stone, pressed until the heat built in her palm, and pushed everything she had into the seal. The shape released her. She stumbled back. She sat down on the canyon floor and breathed for 3 minutes. Then she stood up and kept working. She did not call for help. She had sent word, early on, messages carried by the few people who still knew the old channels, asking for support, asking for even one trained warden to be sent. The messages had been received. She knew that because she received polite responses explaining that the situation was being monitored, that resources were stretched thin, that she was doing excellent work and should hold on a little longer. She held on. She always held on. It was, she had come to understand, both her greatest strength and the reason no one ever rushed. On the night the final stone began to crack, Celine was kneeling at the base of the gate with her forehead nearly touching the stone, every word of the old sealing language moving through her lips in a constant, low murmur. She had been at it for 6 hours. Her knees ached, her voice was nearly gone. The crack appeared at the top of the keystone, the central stone, the most important one, and she watched it spider downward with the calm attention of someone who had already accepted what it meant. She did not panic. Panic would have cost her the last of her focus, and she needed all of it. What she did not know, because she could not look away from the gate, was that a figure had appeared at the tree line behind her. Cale Draveth arrived at the Thornvale Mountains with 30 members of his wolf clan, and the uncomfortable awareness that he was too late. He had ridden without stopping for 2 days after receiving word that the moon gate was in serious danger. The message had reached him late, delayed through 3 different messengers, each one assuming the next had already passed it on. By the time it landed in his hands, The language of it was calm, administrative, the kind of tone that made things sound manageable when they were not. He had mobilized immediately. His second-in-command had told him to wait for more soldiers. He had already been walking to his horse. Now he stood at the threshold of the canyon and watched a woman hold back something that should have required an entire order. He could not cross to her. He understood that much. The energy at the gate's mouth was visible even from where he stood, a shimmer in the air like heat over stone, and he knew that without warden blood in his veins, stepping into it would stop his heart. So he stood at the edge and watched, and it was one of the hardest things he had ever done. The crack in the keystone widened, then a second crack appeared, branching left, then a third. The shimmer in the air turned bright, not warm, but sharp, the way lightning looks close up. The gate was opening. Celine spread her arms wide. Later, Cale would struggle to describe what he saw to anyone who asked. He would say that she looked like someone standing in a river, the energy of the gate pouring around her and through her, and her simply not moving. He would say, her voice carried even over the sound of the stone cracking, steady and clear, the old words of the sealing language falling from her lips without pause. He would say that she looked like someone who had already decided, long before that moment, that she was not going to move no matter what came. He would not say that it frightened him, but it did, a little. Not because she seemed weak, but because she seemed so completely alone in something so enormous. The keystone shattered. For 3 seconds, the gate was open. The cold that poured out was not the cold of wind or winter. It was the cold of something very old that had been pressed behind a door for a very long time, and was now pressing its face to the open gap. It carried with it a feeling, not a sound, not a sight, but a feeling, of everything ever lost. Every goodbye, every empty chair, every morning woken up to silence. Celine felt all of it. She had been feeling it in pieces for 2 years. It was not new. She dropped to her knees at the base of the shattered keystone. She picked up the largest broken piece with both hands. Her palms were already split open, had been for days, and the stone was jagged, but she held it and pressed it back against the gate's mouth and poured the last of herself into it. Not a ritual this time, not the formal words, just everything she was, her history, her stubbornness, her 2 years of solitary work. Every night she had kept going, when stopping would have been so much easier, all of it flowing out through her hands and into the stone. The gate sealed. The red moon went white. Celine lay down on the canyon floor and looked up at the sky. She was aware, distantly, that she should probably stand up. She was also aware that her body had decided it was not going to do that for a while, and she found she had very little argument left in her. Footsteps crossed the threshold. She heard them, careful, deliberate, the kind of steps taken by someone who was moving quickly but did not want to startle her. Then a figure knelt beside her, and she turned her head. The man beside her was tall, even kneeling, with the kind of steady expression that people wear when they are controlling something beneath it. He was looking at her hands, then he looked at her face. "Who are you?" she asked. Her voice came out rougher than she expected. "Cale Dravith," he said. "I came to help." She considered this for a moment. "You're late," she said. "I know," he said it simply, without excuse. "I'm sorry." She looked back at the sky. The moon was white and still. The gate behind them was sealed and quiet. The broken keystone fused back together, as though it had never cracked. She could feel, even lying on the ground with her eyes half closed, that the seal was solid. It would hold for 100 years. She had made sure of that. "The gate is sealed," she said. "It will hold." "Good." A pause. "What about you?" The question landed in a way she had not expected. She was used to questions about the gate, its condition, its status, its timeline. She was not used to someone asking about her as the first follow-up. "I'll be fine," she said. It was the answer she always gave. He did not argue with it. He also did not leave. He stayed beside her, while his soldiers set up camp at the canyon entrance, while a healer came and treated her hands, wrapping them carefully, wincing at the depth of the wounds, and while the cold of the stone floor finally persuaded her that lying down was, perhaps, not the most efficient use of the next few hours. She slept. When she woke, it was morning, and he was still there. "You stayed," she said. Yes. She sat up slowly. Her hands were bandaged. Her body felt like it had been wrung out and left to dry, but the shaking was gone. She flexed her fingers carefully and found them steady. That was something. Over the following hours, as his soldiers moved around the canyon, and the morning light filled the space that had been so dark and pressing the night before, Kale asked her questions. Not official questions, not reports or assessments, but the kind of questions one person asks another when they are genuinely trying to understand something. How long had she been here alone? What the order had been like when it was full? Whether she had family somewhere waiting for her? She answered. She was surprised to find that she wanted to. She had been talking to Stone for so long that having a person respond felt strange in a way that was not bad. He told her, when she asked, about his own work, holding a coalition of clans together across the Northern Territories, managing disputes and border lines, and the slow erosion of the old agreements that had kept the region stable for generations. He did not complain about it. He spoke about it the way she imagined she sounded when she talked about the gate, with the matter-of-fact tone of someone who had decided a long time ago that the work was theirs and had made their peace with that. They walked the gate perimeter together. She did this every morning, checked every stone, every carved line, every point where the seal met the rock of the canyon wall. He walked beside her without asking if that was acceptable. She did not tell him to stay back. At the keystone, she stopped. It looked different in daylight, solid, smooth, no sign of the fractures from the night before. She pressed 2 fingers against it lightly, feeling for the quality of the seal, the way a musician might press a string to check the note. It was strong, better than strong. It was as solid as she had ever felt it, maybe more so, because she had given it the last thing she had, and it had accepted the gift. I always thought someone would come before the end, she said. She said it without bitterness. It was just a true thing. And no one did, he said. No, a breath. But you came after. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I'll come earlier next time. There won't be a next time, she said. The gate is sealed for 100 years. Then I'll come earlier for the next thing. He said it calmly, as though it were simply a fact he was reporting. There's always a next thing. She looked at him for a long moment. She had learned, over the past 2 years, to read the difference between the things people said because they were supposed to, and the things people said because they meant them. He was looking at the gate, not at her, and his expression was the same steady, controlled expression it had been since he arrived, not performing anything, not offering anything with a price attached, just stating a fact. All right, she said. It was a small word. She had always believed that the smallest words were the ones that meant the most, because they were the ones people said when they had stopped trying to sound a certain way and were just speaking plainly. All right, yes, I'll stay, I'll come. They walked back toward the camp. The sun was fully up now, and the canyon that had felt so narrow and cold the night before was lighter, the stone walls catching the morning in strips of gold. Her hands ached under the bandages. She was hungry. She had not thought about being hungry in a long time. Behind them, the moon gate stood sealed and still, its carved stones patient and permanent, the keystone smooth, as if it had always been that way. 100 years from now, someone would stand here and do this work again. She hoped they would not have to do it alone. She hoped, quietly and without making too much of it, that whoever that person was would have someone arrive, not necessarily before the end, but close enough that the ending did not have to be so quiet. For now, she walked in the morning light, and she was not alone, and the gate held, and that was enough.